Thank you, Bill, and our distinguished panelists. Our next segment is a spotlight conversation on infrastructure and innovation shaping the future of work and the U.S. economy. The era of new digital advancements in the technology sector experienced an exponential growth in innovative and smart technology in our day-to-day lives and in the workplace. With the revolution of artificial intelligence, it is essential to consider the coming changes in the workplace that will require digital literacy and a broader understanding of technology. To guide this dynamic discussion, please join me in welcoming panel moderator, Daiquiri Ryan. She's a strategic legal advisor and policy counsel for the National Hispanic Media Coalition. Welcome, Daiquiri.
Hola, mi gente. My name is Daiquiri Ryan, and I'm Strategic Legal Advisor and Policy Counsel with the National Hispanic Media Coalition. I'm so excited to be here with you today and with my amazing panelists to talk to you a bit about infrastructure and innovation and how digital literacy and technology affects our lives as professionals. First, I'm going to give a little bit of an introduction to my panelists. Up first, I have Celeste Carrasco, Director of Federal Public Affairs at AT&T. Celeste is responsible for executing national strategies that achieve corporate, legislative, and regulatory objectives, presenting company opinions to external stakeholders in key issue areas, and managing community partnerships with nonprofit organizations in the Latino corporate social responsibility and consumer advocacy spaces like LULAC. So great to have you here with us, Celeste.
Thank you. I'm grateful to be here, grateful to be here with my panelists. Big thanks to LULAC, Cindy Benavides, Domingo Garcia, the board, and the team behind gathering us all together to have this conversation. I look forward to it.
Absolutely. Also joining us today, we have Rosa Mendoza, founder, president, and CEO of ALLvanza. Rosa started ALLvanza based on her vision, experience, both personally and professionally, and knowledge of underserved communities. And this really gave birth to the organization and set a tone for the organization's critical mission of ensuring Latinx and other underserved communities can have equal opportunity for success in a technology-driven world. Rosa, I remember when you started ALLvanza, and I'm so thrilled to have you here today.
Thank you, Daiquiri. Great seeing you. And thank you to Cindy and her team for including me in this very important conversation today.
And finally, last but certainly not least, we have Susan Gonzales, CEO of AIandYou. AIandYou is a nonprofit on a mission to engage and educate communities of color about AI and equip them with the knowledge and tools to take action. AIandYou provides online resources to help communities understand more about the rapid advancements of AI and how it impacts their lives and livelihoods. Susan's passion for AI actually began during her 5 years at Facebook, where she launched the community engagement and policy for the company. And prior to being at Facebook, she spent over 20 years in external affairs, policy, and communication roles at Fortune 500 companies. Susan, it's a thrill to have you here, and I'm so excited for this amazing panel of Latinas.
Hi, I'm Susan Gonzales, CEO of AIandYou. AIandYou is an organization focused on educating and engaging our communities about artificial intelligence so we can level the playing field. We want to avoid repeating history and letting our community be left behind. Check out AIandYou.org.
All right, so let's go ahead and jump right into this conversation. I want to just, start by talking a little bit more generally about digital literacy. Oftentimes we talk about the digital divide, we talk about our community's involvement in technology. We think of connection, which of course we need that broadband access at home. And then we think of devices so you can use that connection. But sometimes digital literacy becomes an afterthought, right? The ability to really understand the power of technology and how it can change our lives for generations. So I would love to hear from each of you, how does technology impact digital literacy among incoming and current Latinx professionals?
I can go first. So you're absolutely right. A connection, a broadband connection is not enough when you don't have the skills to be able to use that connection and put it to good use, right? So one of the things that we do is we educate our communities, underserved communities, about the importance of having the skills that are needed for us to navigate the online world in a safe and an effective way. because it's extremely, extremely important. You know, I give this example in every single panel when I speak about this subject, because I really cannot think of a better example. My parents are very young and they have access to technology and they can afford to pay for a broadband connection, but they don't have the skills that they need to navigate the online world. So when my mother needs to go to the doctor, or my father, they obviously have to go in person because they can't do it online. And again, they have access to the internet. They have a computer at home. So they, you know, if they had the skills, they would be able to, you know, visit the doctor online as opposed to having to drive to the doctor's office. My parents are very young. I'm not talking about an elderly couple, right? Because obviously the older folks are, the more difficult it is for them to have the skills that they need in order for them to navigate the online world. But I'm talking about two very young folks, right? And they don't have those skills. And there's a lot of people in our communities that do not have those skills for many reasons. There's many people in the Latino community that have jobs and they don't see you know, the internet as something that they need because of the jobs that they do. An example is, you know, farm workers. They don't really use technology when they go on the fields to work. So they don't think that it's a necessity for them to use it, or they don't have the skills. And if they do, they use those, they go online and that's really all they do. So it's extremely important that we educate folks about, you know, the importance of online resources, excuse me. But it's also really important that we have educational, you know, programs to ensure that we provide the tools for everyone to be able to navigate the online world, like I said, in an effective and safe way.
I mean, Rosa could not have said it better. I think like one of the things that you said was like the power of technology, right? I think you used that phrase. And digital literacy, sometimes, I don't know, maybe it's just me, it may have like a little bit of a negative connotation, like literacy, right? Like we don't, like we need to learn stuff. Well, we do need to learn. But I like the power word. So empowerment is what I'm hearing now being used as digital empowerment. And, one of the things that's happening is that the things that are available online for us are evolving faster than we can learn them, right? And you said that this was more for like young professionals, right? Professionals, and not so young. I think all professionals, we all need to kind of learn these new tools because we were accustomed to interacting with our computers, with our technology in a certain way. And unfortunately, the current situation has forced us to take a look at this. We're having these conferences online now, and we have all had to learn new skills. We had to learn, hell, we've become media experts, right? Like lighting and setting up and how our recordings are being heard, before it was all the in-person presence and how you communicated that way. And folks are doing interviews in this manner. Before, you used to have to get dressed and get there. And so how do you present, how do you communicate through this medium, right? This new medium. So that's the important piece. I think the digital education that needs to happen is, to Rosa's point, is for the adoption piece, for the folks that may not have the current access, or they have the access, but they don't fully understand the need. But as professionals, how do we evolve with the tools that are available to us so that we can remain competitive in a very demanding environment, in particular for Latinos, right? Like, how do we continue to be seen, to be heard, is this an opportunity? Because maybe before we weren't as forefront as we are right now. Now we're in front of the camera and we can have access to senior leadership. You can ask questions, and this may provide a huge opportunity for us to position ourselves strongly in a workforce. But are we doing it right? Do we have the right tools? Do we have the right information? And I guess I just wanted to kind of add to what Rosa was saying, because I think this is a critical point for us in the workforce to be able to leverage this to the fullest.
I think I would like to add the fact that, so sorry, I think I would like to add the fact that many of our young folks in the Latino community, they do know how to navigate the online world. But part of the problem is that I'm not sure that they're protecting themselves when they go online. And that's, another issue for another day, another conversation, but it's also extremely important that they fully understand how to protect themselves when they go online, right? Because their information may be stolen, or they might post something on social media that might hurt them in the future. And the other problem is that although they do have the skills, their skills are very much skills for them to be able to use social media platforms. And there's nothing wrong with using social media platforms. I have, pages on many of those platforms, but the skills that they have are limited, right? They're limited to posting something on social media, to creating a TikTok video, to posting something on Instagram. But I'm not sure that they truly know, that they truly have all the skills that they need in order for them to, for example, be able to obtain a job at one of these tech companies. Do they know what the process is like to apply for a job at one of these tech companies? I don't think they have those skills, even if they are able to go online without a problem, right, quote unquote. And that's something that we also need to educate our young folks about, right? It's not just the problem of, older folks not being able to navigate the online world. It's also a problem with younger folks that, again, are using, are going online, but are going only for entertainment purposes, and not necessarily using those, the online tools for educational purposes. And I'm not sure that they know about that, right? That they know about those tools or how to use them, or, we are consumers, but we're not being, producers of these new wonderful innovations. One of the main things that ALLvanza did, my organization, during the infrastructure conversation that was happening in the Senate, is that we educated the senators about the importance of them allocating funds for this same purpose, right? To educate folks about, the importance of having an online connection, but to also educate them, give them the skills, right? Provide the training and the skills that they need, again, for them to be able to navigate the online world.
Well, today there are so many new technologies, and the most prevalent one is artificial intelligence. And how it impacts where we go as a Latinx community is really about education and understanding. So most of us don't understand that we interact with artificial intelligence every single day. The minute we pick up the phone, we're interacting with AI, as it's called. And as AI grows, it's going to be really important for our community to understand what AI is and what AI isn't. And that really is part of digital skills.
Absolutely. And to be able to do it for our community in a culturally relevant way, right? A way that feels authentic. I think you have a really great point there, Rosa, in that, how do young people take their social media skills, or kind of these skills they grew up with as a digital native, and turn that into, a professional brand, right? We like to think of like personal branding, professional branding as a very like millennial thing. The truth is, right, that's a huge part of what it takes to get recruited today. And, it's on both sides. The companies who are recruiting need to be able to use those tools and have, people in-house who understand that. And then, also as a candidate. That's something that we hear a lot about, in addition to my NHMC hat, I'm also the chairwoman of Latinas in Tech for the DC Metro chapter. And that is something we hear a lot from young professionals, young Latinos who either are just starting their tech careers or they want to switch into the tech field, is how do I, what's out there? How can I learn this? And, we do our best to provide some workshops, but, this is a perfect segue into our next question is, what are some tools and resources that are available to improve digital literacy among Latinx professionals, young or old?
There are quite a few. We conduct educational workshops, again, to ensure that people not only have the skills that they need to navigate the online world, but also to ensure that they understand why it matters and why it's important. LULAC, for example, has technology centers in many different places in the country. And, obviously, congrats and props to LULAC for having these centers, because they really do help a lot of people that need this support, right? But we need more. We need more, and we need, more funding for organizations like LULAC that are doing this great work, because it's important that people in our community get this important information, this education that they need. But oftentimes people in our community don't trust, organizations that they're not familiar with, right? Or companies that they're not familiar with, and for obvious reasons, and no one can blame them. I mean, people in our communities are often the victims of scams online scams or any type of scam. It just have to be online, right? So they're hesitant when it comes to using a new service or, you know, trying something new because they don't know what they're getting themselves into. So it's important that organizations like, you know, ALLvanza and LULAC continue to, you know, try to do everything we can to provide these resources to our communities. But we got to do more. We obviously got to do more. And like I said, I was glad to see that, you know, part of the infrastructure conversation and package includes, you know, funding for digital literacy, because it's extremely important. And my hope is that, you know, whoever, you know, is going to be in charge of the funding, that they work with organizations like ALLvanza and LULAC, because it's really important that they partner with organizations that are trusted by the Latino community in order for us to be able to truly help people that need help the most.
Yeah, and in addition to that, some of my recommendations to my mentees has been to, you know, definitely be on LinkedIn. I know that LinkedIn may not be a top choice for young professionals, but I think they're missing out on a lot of information and opportunities that are posted on LinkedIn. For example, at AT&T, the Hacemos employee group will hold many informational webinars that basically coach not only employees, the current employees, but anyone. They're open to everyone, and we are not exclusive, you know, the only corporation that does this. I think in this new world of virtual engagement, many employee groups are now doing outreach to the community on education, on literacy, or, you know, sometimes, you know, it could be across any industry that they just want to basically educate and elevate Latinos. So they post it on LinkedIn, right? So unless you are connected to these folks, you're not going to see these opportunities, and they're absolutely free. And they welcome the participation because that's what they are, you know, that's their mission. I also do LinkedIn Learning. I do Coursera. You know, one of the things that I have become a professional student of during pandemic, and any opportunity that is presented, I realize that my peers keep me informed of all these free opportunities that I wouldn't be able to catch it all, right? So my network is my strongest ally in my development. I don't know, I think everybody that I know in my network took that University of Central Florida DEI training that we did last. I think we all signed up. All of DC was on it because we were all like, you need to get on this. It's free. It's great. It's awesome. And you know, that's the power of the network, right? And I think as Latinos, we need to not only get information in our direction, but when information comes across our desk, is to share it out, right? And so that others can benefit from it. So whether it's an ERG opportunity, an employee group opportunity, or a free course that is being sponsored by someone, and it's being given as an opportunity for a community, we need to kind of push it out to our community and encourage them to participate. And I'm just going to do a plug for Bank of America here, because Bank of America sponsors the eCornell Women in Entrepreneurship certificate. And I, you know, I pushed it out to my network, and I think all of the women that I know are currently enrolled in that. And I don't know, you know, I don't know if if Bank of America or eCornell are that happy about it, because I think they wanted to kind of monitor enrollment. But you know, these are amazing women, and I want them to succeed. You know, because it's not specific to Latinas, and I wanted Latinas in there, right? Power in numbers and in communication, and I think that's how we get ourselves educated and how we get ourselves, you know, at the forefront of this, tragedy of a pandemic. Is we need to come out of this stronger, more educated, well-positioned. You know, the whole gap that we have experienced, whether it's an educational gap for our kids, or a workforce gap, we need to combat that through these opportunities. So if I can help another Latina elevate her or them in their job, in their development, you better believe it, I will do so.
I think Celeste, or the social media queen, as I would like to call her, has given a perfect example of how to use social media to your benefit, right? And in a positive way. One of the things that I mentioned earlier is that unfortunately young folks, young Latinos are using social media, but again, just for purely entertainment purposes. And the examples Celeste just gave are exactly what we need to be doing and what we need to be educating young folks about, right? Like yes, use social media. I think social media is great, but use it for educational purpose as well, right? Not just to post a funny video on TikTok or, you know, a nice picture on Instagram. So I think it is, yes, there are many, many resources available. And Celeste, you know, pointed out great ones actually. But how do we get everyone to sort of understand that, right? That's one of the challenges that we need to work on. Like, how do we ensure that these young folks learn about these opportunities? And thank you, Celeste, for always doing that, because yes, you are right. You're always sharing opportunities with people, and that's very important. You know, you take your leadership position very seriously, and you are a true leader in our community. You truly do try to empower and help, you know, younger folks in our community to ensure that they advance and that they, you know, get the resources they need in order for them to continue advancing in their careers. So it is very important, but not everyone does that, right? So unfortunately, we do have that huge challenge that we need to ensure that these young folks, like I said, when they're going online, we got to make sure that they actually look for those resources and use, you know, social media to benefit their educational and career needs.
Today, there really aren't that many tools out for our community to learn about new technologies. And my work is really focused on artificial intelligence. And so I'm happy to share that our community can go to AIandYou, AIandYou.org, and to learn about everything, AI basics, you know, AI and how it impacts mortgages and how it impacts employment, how it impacts criminal justice. These are the things that our community really needs to understand. And we're so honored to be able to offer that information to anybody in English and in Spanish. And I think that's the first step, that our community really needs to start educating ourselves about these new technologies, because they're not coming and they're here. You know, it's almost pandemic-like, if you will. AI is coming in a big way, and we are not prepared. And so now is our time to get prepared.
Absolutely. Thank you, all three of you, for that. I'm sitting over here taking notes. I'm like, okay, Bank of America does this. So I'm sure our audience is as well. You know, and one of the things we're here to talk about is future of work. And I feel like this is a great conversation, kind of the way we're leading through. And part of, thinking about the future of work is thinking about, what does the workforce look like in the future? What do the jobs look like? And so I'd love to hear from y'all about, how do you think the digital economy is growing in the future? What does it look like in the future? And how does our community, the Latinx community, participate and positively impact what that future looks like?
I'll go. We all have seen what that looks like, right? Because none of us, or at least I didn't know anything about Zoom until the pandemic started, right? And now we all have to become experts in Zoom in order for us to be able to do our job. Those of us that are lucky enough to work from home. In Zoom and the many other platforms, obviously, that allow you to connect with folks, online. And there's too many. There's so many that I haven't even used or heard of. And this is not going anywhere, right? This is going to continue to be. This is going to stay. I think one of the few, or the only, I should say, the only benefit of this pandemic has been the fact that companies are now understanding that it's okay for their employees to work from home. That we are able to do this. And it's actually a little interesting that it took a pandemic for companies to actually allow their employees to work from home. But obviously, because of that, we also need to make sure that we learn all these new technologies that we are going to have to use moving forward. Every company in one way or another will become or has become a technology company, or they won't survive. That's just how it works, right? I mean, I think I give this example often because it's also, a perfect example. to point out the fact that Blockbuster did not innovate in what happened to that company. It died, right? They should have done what Netflix did. So every company is changing, every company is innovating. Every company, and like I said, in one way or another, is an innovation company, and it's a technology company. The problem is that, if we continue to see a lack of diversity in every industry, then obviously that impacts our communities in very negative ways. And if we want to continue to move forward, we as a country want to continue to move forward as leaders in innovation, then we have to make sure that we include everyone in this country, and educate everyone and include everyone, because there's no way the US is going to continue to lead on innovation if we are leaving Black and brown folks behind. I always say, and I love to say this, and I will keep repeating it to exhaustion, if you leave the Latino community behind, you will leave the future of our country behind. So it's very, very important that companies are being inclusive, and that they reflect, what we see in this country. We live in a diverse country, and it's important that these companies have diversity in their workforce, in order for us to be able to make, like you mentioned, have a positive impact in the digital economy. Otherwise, yes, our digital economy is going to be hurt if we don't include, if we leave a lot of groups behind, like Black and brown folks.
So I love this question because I get to play, like, let me predict the future. And I just love that. I love that because, whether I'm right or I'm wrong, there's no right answer or wrong answer to this question. But I love to kind of play like, oh, let me, Walter Mercado, the future out of this. So here's my prediction of the future of the workforce. So I think companies have discovered that a lot of these jobs can be done virtually, right? Not all of them, but a good portion of them can be done virtually. But that brings a big asterisk at the end of that, which really truly means from anywhere. So now the competition, where you were competing with somebody that lived in your geography, now you're going to be competing with somebody that lives in this world, right? So your competition just multiplied exponentially. So if you brought talent to the table that was like, hey, I am the only person that has my background in the, Washington, D.C. area, now these companies have realized that, Celeste, there are other Celeste that exist in this world that possess her talent and her ability, and they happen to be located, whatever, in France, in Spain, in India, in South Africa. And so now my competition has increased. What does that mean, right? What does that mean? So I'm not trying to be gloom and doom here, but I am trying to be realistic that we, the questions that we answered before about educating ourselves, keeping up with the trends, keeping up with our skill sets is incredibly important. So, we need, now there's more accessibility to talent from, because we have globalized the access to the talent. And, unfortunately for a lot of us, this is also going to throw into a competitive pricing of salaries, right? So all of these things is where I see the future of it going. I think we're going to see a dip in the salaries that we earn because it's going to go competitive across the globe, and then it's going to come back and normalize because the living wage across the world is going to increase. So we're all going to normalize. So what I see is that maybe not us, because this isn't going to happen overnight, but our children and maybe our grandchildren are truly going to compete in a global market, in a global economy, regardless of the path that they're going to take in their careers. They're going to be competing with the world. They're not just going to be competing with other US candidates. So I think this is going to bring educational issues. It's going to bring, access to technology for sure. Because if you are a Latino that does not have access to compete in a global market, then you will be left behind, to Rosa's point. So we need to think strategically long term. This is a long game of how do we educate our kids that are in elementary school today, the kids that are going into high school, the kids that are going into college. Are we giving them the right tools? Are we setting up them for success so that they can, in turn, their children can be successful as well? Because if we don't play for the long game here, this country is not going to be a leading country when this market, when this global market truly becomes a global economy. So that's my prediction. My prediction is that this is so important, so foundational, that we need to think generations into the future, or we are not going to win this game.
That's absolutely right. And that's, I think, that the point that I was trying to make when I mentioned that this is not, right, every company is becoming a technology company, right? And if we don't jump on board, if, like Celeste mentioned, if we don't learn the skills that are necessary for us to do the jobs of the future, then yes, we are going to be left behind. And if we're left behind, this country's going to be left behind. So it's just, it's a vicious cycle. So we absolutely do got to plan, not just for what's currently happening, but as Celeste mentioned, for what we are going to see, because the technology is not going anywhere. It's going to become more and more and more important in our lives, more a part of our lives, more than what it already has, right? So we need to jump on board, and we got to do everything we can to educate our community about how to do that, how to jump on board with everything that we are seeing in the innovation space.
What's happening in the new digital age is it's not in the future, it's happening today. So for example, we get in the car, we use GPS, or we apply for a loan. And if we apply for a loan with new technology that says, just apply for a loan, it'll take only 10 minutes. Well, what those 10 minutes do is with the technology, it tracks how many mistakes we made on the application, how many times we corrected them, where we live, where we shop, how often do we pay our bills, all within just one click of a button. And sadly, a lot of our community does a lot of our digital work on our phones. And so right out of the gate, we're discriminated against, because certainly you're going to make more mistakes, right, if we're using our phone. So these are the types of things that we all need to understand. And if we have been declined for a loan, for example, people need to know where to go and to understand more about what our rights are as people to be applying for financial services. So again, we have some information along these lines on AIandYou.org.
Absolutely. And I think, oftentimes we think of it as something that, it feels a little intangible, right? Like, how do we prepare? And, in HMC, we have a fantastic fearless leader, Brenda Castillo, and I love to kind of quote her in that she always talks about we need to start at the elementary school level. And I feel like that shocks some people, right? They're like, those are kids, but I mean, a lot of other communities start that young, right? And it's really all it takes is to plant the idea that, hey, these kinds of jobs exist. This is something that you could possibly do one day. And I think about my journey, and when I was in college, we were studying the power of social media and digital ads during the Obama campaigns. And I was a poli-sci major. I was really excited about it. But by the time that I got to the point where I could do an internship on a campaign, all of that information was outdated. They were like, that's great that that how we did it 4 years ago, but today we're doing it different. And, I think about that a lot, and we talked about this a little bit. By the time that we are kind of catching up, it's already way out in front of us again. So figuring out, how do we become those innovators? How do we sit in the chair that's coding or that's leading to set those trends so that we're not trying to catch up and follow them? Yeah. I think that's super, super important. As we're talking about future of work, I'd like to transition us a little bit. And I'd love to hear from you, Susan, about your experience with AIandYou and your organization, but particularly, what impact does artificial intelligence have on the digital economy and on our community, right? How does it impact us kind of, as we've been talking about, in the workforce and the future of work, but also just in our everyday lives?
What AI is doing today, there are so many wonderful things, right? In medicine, with cardiovascular disease, diabetes, hypertension, there are so many great AI for good stories out there. But sadly, there are so many that are not so good, that are discriminating against our people, because the code that makes AI work is typically not written by people of color, unfortunately, right? So first step is we need more people of color in technology. That's going to take a while. So what do we do in the meantime? We understand how it works as best we can, particularly like in the criminal justice system with facial recognition and things like that. We learn that through a lot of unfortunate examples that facial recognition is flawed. So a couple companies pulled that back, and they are not offering facial recognition as a tool because it's been proven that it discriminates against Black and brown people. So what we need to do again as a community is to be prepared. We need to get prepared to not be left behind. We've been left behind historically with technology. Now is the time to understand what's happening now and what's coming.
Thanks so much, Susan. Absolutely. Would anyone else like to kind of chime in here? I'm definitely no expert in AI, but I'm sure some of these amazing Latinos here are.
I don't think you have to be an expert in AI to understand that. Again, if these companies don't have the diversity needed to produce these new innovations and these new emerging technologies, they're going to have biases, right? So it's very, very important that these new emerging technologies are being created by diverse minds, diverse people with, different experiences and different cultures, in order for these technologies to actually be positive, as opposed to them, being biased against certain groups of people. Law enforcement, they use, artificial intelligence and, facial recognition, for example, for many of the things that they do. And if these technologies have flaws, then we are going to see a negative impact, or these technologies impacting certain people in a negative way. So again, I always go back to diversity. We solve these issues with having more diversity, having different perspectives at the table, in every industry for that matter.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I think one thing that we have alluded to during this entire conversation is the pandemic, right? So much of, right, if we had this conversation 2 years ago, it would have been a little bit different than how, not only the medium we're having it in today, but, the way that we're talking about the future of work. So, what digital advancements do you think are going to impact Latinx professionals as we kind of return to work? And Celeste, I would love to hear a little bit more about, you talked about the workforce gap or the workplace gap. Can you talk to us a little bit more about what that means for our community, and not only today, but as eventually, hopefully we'll return to work, right? Hopefully we'll return to doing these things in person one day.
Yeah, I mean, I talk about these things. Of course, I'm not an expert, but I have enough connections into having these conversations that they, in reality, they worry me. They worry me that, folks are not taking these as opportunities to further themselves, that we're all, we all may be in a comfortable, let's just wait and see what happens, versus, to your point, being in the driver's seat of a lot of these things, right? When other communities are taking these opportunities and jumping in the driver's seat and moving forward and discovering new ways and opportunities, and they develop themselves. They looked at a lot of these government subsidies and plans, that all the money that is being put into the economy to help individuals, businesses develop. We I have to include myself. Sometimes we take a more relaxed approach to things, and we're like, oh, let me just enjoy, like, let me learn how to bake a cake, which is fine if I was starting a bakery, right? The more I see the opportunities that have flourished during the pandemic are being done by people that are not Latinos. So where do we go wrong, right? Why don't we look at these opportunities and say, this is where I'm going to push forward. This is where I'm going to have difficult conversations with my leadership. This is where, and to quote my boss, I'm going to say, she goes, this is our time. She's like, this is our time. And that's what she drives. She drives that this is our time, no matter how difficult it is, no matter how uncomfortable we may make other folks, this is our time. And we don't think about it that way, right? And we don't hear us saying that to each other to say, this is our time. We're more like, oh, it will be our time, or our time will come, and I think, Daiquiri, we can kind of like sit back all we want while other people drive. And let's not be upset when we arrive at a destination that is not where we want it to go, right? Or that is not beneficial to us. So the future of Latino work will be whatever we want it to be if we decide to take ownership of our careers, ownership of our education, ownership of our relationships. Getting up in the morning and have intent and purpose as to what it is that we are going to accomplish that day. So whether it's reading the New York Times, whether it's reading Political or whatever your industry may be, are you keeping up with the trends? Are you educating yourself? Or are you getting the news from, somebody posting something on social media? Is that how you're getting the news? Is that how you're educating yourself, right? So again, very specific examples, but I think they could easily be translated to any industry, right? Are you the subject matter expert for what your level of expertise is, right? Or are you allowing somebody else speak on your behalf? If you're the only Latino in the room, you need to know what's going on in the Latino world. Subscribe to all of the million of newsletters that are out there. Read, put the alerts that will tell you, hey, this is happening in the Latino world. This is how the community is being affected. So when somebody else starts speaking, you can say, as a matter of fact, let me fill you in with that information, right? And become that Latino CEO of your realm, right? That's how we're going to beat this. That's how we're going to become the next, we're going to seize those opportunities, because right now, I think we're not even in the passenger seat. I think we're like, in the back of the van, just checking up our social media and not really paying attention. And we need to pay attention.
Absolutely, absolutely. One thing that this kind of actually made me think of is a statistic that I heard the other day that I think it's like 4.2 million women have left the workforce in the pandemic. And, I love this idea of, let's get in the driver's seat. And I think it can go multiple ways, right? Like, let's get in the driver's seat to get into that leadership position and to advance, our gente, but let's also get in the driver's seat to say, we cannot continue this like a generational cycle of working ourselves to death, right? And having this short life expectancy, because, right, if you're a CEO and then you die at 54, that's not going to help anyone. And so I'm curious if there's anything that y'all think, digital advancements might help in that way, that work-life balance, because we're seeing that a large chunk of those women who, we know that Latinas have really kind of felt a big part of the, not the burden, I think that's the wrong word, but I guess the brunt of the job loss and economic disparity of the pandemic. So are there digital advances that might help moms or people working multiple jobs, or someone who just has finally gotten to that place and they just need a little bit more of work-life balance to be able to truly come into themselves and be that best leader they could be?
Yeah,
I think it's
go ahead, Rosa. Well, let me just because I'm like super passionate about this, and here's my thing about that. And thank you for mentioning that this isn't all about achieving and burning yourself into exhaustion. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that no matter what your passion is, no matter what your call in life is, technology is a tool, is a great opportunity for you to figure out how to establish yourself in a place of Zen, let's call it, right? And the other thing is, like, there is no such a thing as perfection. Let's stop pushing each other into this, like, oh, she can't do this, or she failed here, or she failed there. Here's the thing. We are all individual tracks in this life. My life doesn't apply to anybody else's track because it's my life. I'm unique. So are you. So is Rosa. We all have unique tracks. Success is defined by us and nobody else, right? So nobody's going to define what a successful mom is but you. Nobody's going to define what a successful career person but you, okay? Titles aren't going to define your success. Your bank account isn't going to define your success. Only you can do that. Technology is going to help you achieve that. But I'm going to go a little bit further than technology. And I'm going to say your network. And your network is your family, your friends, your acquaintances, the person that let you jump in front of them at the grocery store because you were in a hurry and they were kind enough to let you do that. All of these people are your network. And all of these folks allow you to have that work-life balance. I cannot have what I have without my network. And that network includes Rosa, right? Because sometimes I'm like, hey, can you help me with this, right? And does she need to do it? No, she doesn't need to do it. But you know what? We're here for each other and we build on each other to be able to be successful. Sometimes it's, can you educate me on this topic because I don't fully understand it? And instead of me trying to pretend like I can do it all, I go to somebody that's an expert and I say, can you just educate me, give me the 5-minute version? And if we did that for everything in life, if we lean, and to quote, the lean in, but if we lean on each other to help each other be successful, we would be unstoppable.
That's absolutely right. I'm fully agree with you. And I think actually we can use technology to find networks, as Celeste mentioned, because networks are very, very important. Sometimes I have a child that is about to be 4 soon. And sometimes I'm like, I don't know what activities to do for a 4-year-old or somebody that is going to be 4-year-old soon. He'll be 4 soon. It's like, I don't really know what to do. And actually a friend of mine, Celeste's point, was saying, hey, there's this group called, Moms of Arlington or something like that, because I live in Arlington. And I was like, oh, that's a good idea. But you're right, and you can use technology to find out about those networks because you do need that support. It is very difficult to be a mom and to have a professional job at the same time. It's just very, very, very difficult. Because you have the pressure of being the best mom you can be, but you also have the pressure of doing the best job you can, and it's a lot of work. And you do need to lean on technology to sort of, find ways to cope with all the things that you need to do, and on those networks that are very valuable and very, very important.
COVID-19 really pulled the curtain back on the inequities in our communities, particularly when it comes to technology. What we cannot let happen is repeating history, which we saw years and years ago with broadband adoption and access. But it's different with artificial intelligence because AI is available to everybody on their phones, for example. So what we need to do is to, for example, educate small business owners how to use their phone or any device to do better marketing using these AI tools. How do we help people understand about AI employment tools? So we want to ensure that people aren't discriminated against. The bottom line is pre-COVID-19, but particularly post-COVID-19, we need to be educated. We really need to understand what's happening. AI is here now. We use it every single day. Think about the times you use GPS or you shop on Amazon. That's all behind that is all AI. You know, when it recommends the new book, that's AI. So I implore everybody to get educated, to be prepared, because these new technologies will avoid history repeating itself.
Absolutely. And I love that we're all referencing things in the DC area. I've been in DC for 7 years now, and people would tell me, oh, there's a good sense of community for Latinos in DC because, we're few and far in between. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure. I grew up in Texas. I went to school in Arizona. I was like, yeah, Latinos, our communities everywhere. But really, it's so powerful, I think, especially Latinas, as you guys mentioned, being able to lean on each other and just, pick up the phone or give a recommendation. And, I think we can all look back even in the last couple of years and say there is a line of Latinas who have helped us get where we are today. And I wish somebody had really explained that to me before I moved to DC. So if anyone here is listening, thinking about moving to DC, please tap into that network. Wonderful. Well, this is, again, Poderosas, you guys are amazing. This has been a fantastic panel. I really want us to be able to close out with, not only closing remarks, but a call to action. So, if there's something that you really, feel passionate to mention about how, for young professionals listening who want to improve their digital literacy skills, or, for anyone who wants to work in policy or future of work, or anything that you might have going on at your organizations that you want to promote, I'd love to hear from each of you. I think let's start with Rosa.
I think I have a couple different messages for the different folks in the audience. For the parents that are listening to this conversation, I would love to say to you that you should encourage your children at a very, very young age, kinder for that matter, to start, learning about what STEM is. And why STEM education is important, especially for kids that are already in middle school, high school. They need to get into the STEM fields. There are very, very, very few Latinos in STEM education or getting a STEM degree, and it's extremely important that we have more folks in those areas, because like I said, every company has become or will become a technology company in one way or another. And if we don't have the skills for the jobs that these companies are creating, then we are not going to be able to jump on board with this new society that is based on innovation and on technology. For the young folks in the audience that are listening to us, I would, repeat what Celeste perfectly mentioned, which is do everything you can to prepare yourself for everything, for school, for your career, for whatever it is that you're doing at the moment, right? Celeste is absolutely right when she mentions that it will be our fault if we are one of those, if we're the type of people that already has the resources to be able to advance and we're not taking advantage of that. Yes, you should take advantage of that, right? Because at the end of the day, you will end up, as Celeste perfectly mentioned, in a place where you don't want to be if you don't take advantage of the resources that you do have available. Yes, I also understand that there's some people that don't have those resources, right? And for those people like me, I'm doing everything I can to advocate on your behalf, right? To ensure that there are programs like with the infrastructure, conversation happening on the Hill. I made sure that I had meetings with these senators, and I made sure I told these people, hey, we need money to ensure that we give the skills, the digital skills to the people that don't have these skills, or we need to allocate money to ensure that we build infrastructure and to ensure that we give a connection to the people that don't have a connection, right? So those of us that work in the advocacy space, we're trying to do everything we can to advocate on behalf of people that don't have the resources and that don't have the access to these new, technologies. But those of you who have that access, take advantage of it. Don't just go online to, post a picture on Instagram or to create a TikTok video. They're funny, keep doing it. I like them. But, take a course. There's a lot of free courses. Create a LinkedIn page as well. LinkedIn is not as fun as TikTok. It's a little more boring, but guess what? It's a lot more useful, right? When it comes to your career. So do things like that. Hey, follow Celeste on social media. She can give you a lot of tips on how to use social media to advance in your career. The social media queen, like I said. And for the established professionals in the audience, what I would like to say is reach out, help the young professionals. I have seen this way too many times when I see an older, more established professional, speaking on panels saying how important it is to help our young folks and help our community. And then I go to an event, at least before the pandemic, I used to go to events, and I see young folks reaching out to these more established professionals, and these young folks are being ignored by these professionals that claim that they want to help, our community. So I will ask them and encourage them to help out, right? If you're at a position and you've been, you have worked hard and you have earned that position, then help somebody else, right? Who maybe has not been, as lucky as you to sort of be at the right time, right place at the right time, and, has gotten that opportunity. So help the young folks, the young professionals in every industry, and help them out, be a mentor, be sort of, the ladder that they need, open that window for them to get in, right? So I think we just got to work together as a community, and we got to help each other in whatever we can, whatever way we can, because the pandemic has impacted our community in a very negative way. As usual, it has impacted minority communities more than other communities. Shocker, right? So we really need to do everything we can so that, the impact that we have felt with this pandemic doesn't really, doesn't really impact us for too long, right? Because this impact that we felt, unfortunately, is going to have a negative consequence for a very long time. So let's try to help each other and, lift our community up and ensure that our community is prepared to, hit the ground running once hopefully this is over soon. And also so they're ready to hit the ground running with the new jobs of the future and all the emerging technologies that we are seeing.
I really liked Rosa's approach. First of all, thank you for the shout out to follow me on social media. For sure, you can find me on LinkedIn. I have Instagram. I have Twitter. Twitter, I'm not as active, but for sure you can find me. And I'm very active. I engage. I don't usually not take on a follow. So just let me know. I'll follow you back. But here's the thing. All of these things that we are talking about take time and they take effort, right? So nobody's going to come, kudos to participating in this conference, and kudos for taking the time to listen to to the information that we are sharing, because this is taking time from your day, and already you are ahead of the game, because you're hopefully walking away from this with some valuable information. Let me start by pitching. You might be thinking like, oh, I don't have enough money to get access to the internet. LULAC has a page with all of the reduced internet across the country. So carriers like AT&T, Comcast, Charter, Cox, Verizon, everybody that is out there has a low cost internet broadband program. So you need to figure out who your internet service provider is. You go to LULAC's page and it'll be a link in there so that you can figure out what the process is to apply and obtain it. On average, don't quote me on it, but on average is about $10 for an internet connection. Some programs offer wireless routers with it. They all vary from carrier to carrier, but they're there. But it will take work for you to figure out which one applies to you. And then it'll take work for you to apply and to do the applications and to go through the process. In the end, you will be rewarded with internet broadband at your house that you can use for all of the things that we are talking about. Now, if you are a parent and you have a kid, I have a 10-year-old, and let me tell you, I sign her up for everything that comes across my desk that she can benefit from. So whether it's a, let's learn to cook, before pandemic, all of these, like the Apple Store and the Microsoft Store and all of these, they have free classes that you can have these kids go in and take these classes at their locations so that they can learn how to do Minecraft coding and all of these things. I had her signed up for everything, just like I have her signed up for, let's build a little Home Depot or Lowe's carpentry set, because I don't know what she is going to be when she grows up, and I want her to have the skills that are needed. I sign her up. Again, it takes time and it takes effort, but in the end, you will be rewarded. And all of these things that I'm mentioning are free, by the way. It just takes time. And to Rosa's point, it takes that connectivity of being connected to other people that will say, hey, Lowe's has this free kit things that you need to sign up for it. And yes, you have to sign up online, so you need internet, or at least you need a phone with an internet connection. So that's the hustle for the parents. The hustle for the students. Educate, educate, educate. And believe me, once you graduate, it doesn't stop there. I know you want to like grab your diploma and run. It doesn't stop. All right. I graduated decades ago. I still educate myself. I don't want to be left behind. I always saw my family, be committed to continuing education, whether it's certifications, again, whether it's reading the newspapers or the trade, the trade publications in whatever industry that you are in. You always want to keep up with the latest trends. And my young professionals that have already gotten a job, bless you. My young professionals, I encourage you to figure out what your benefits are at your job. Again, educate yourself, ask questions. Are there employee groups, business resource groups, whatever they are called? Join them. You don't have to only belong to the Hispanic one. Join a group that you are not a member of, like, join the, I don't even know what it could be. It could be like the veterans, at AT&T, you don't have to be a member of that community to join that ERG. You can join the Asian Pacific, organizations and support that and learn and be educated. And they may have access to things that you've never heard of. So that's how you build your network. So ERGs, what kind of educations do they have? We happen to be a large organization. We have training. You could be a professional student at AT&T because we have so much training. We also have, if you want to go back to school, we have Coursera access, we have LinkedIn access, we have all these things. What are your companies offering? Is this an opportunity for you to go back to school and get another degree or get a master's if you have not completed your degree and now is an opportunity? Do it. Take advantage of that. And, just get involved. Get involved in groups. People are starting. We have a knitting group. Okay, they do virtual meetings for knitting. And that is one of the most attended meetings I've ever seen, right? I can't knit, but everybody else is knitting. I just kind of look. But the whole thing is like, these are social networks that will empower you to be, to be more engaging, and they will empower you by sharing information. They will empower you by making a connection. The person that's knitting next to you may be a hiring manager for something else, right? So you never know how you are going to leverage these opportunities. So all of these things are actionable items. These are things that you can start doing today that will not cost you anything but time. So invest your time wisely. right? So we're making choices instead of catching up on that mini series that has 250 episodes. Let's now focus on education. Not that it's a bad thing, but let's prioritize. If you want to elevate your brand, you want to elevate yourself, you want to figure it out, there are free pre-recorded things that we have done during pandemic out there, and you have free access to them, right? It's your choice, it's your hustle.
I'm over here taking notes. I love it. I love it. Thank y'all so much. I want to do just 2 quick plugs before we close. For anyone who might be struggling to pay your internet bill at home, in addition to the wonderful resources that we've talked about right now, there's also the Emergency Broadband Benefit Program at the FCC. If you qualify, you can get up to $50 a month in discounts off your internet bill. And it's a really great program, especially as we see students go back to school and, you know, as we continue in this hybrid environment. So you can go to getemergencybroadband.org if you'd like to learn more about the emergency broadband benefit. I know a lot of the groups here are, I think probably everyone here, you know, participated in getting this program stood up and making sure that it's accessible to our community, regardless of your citizenship status. So that's one plug. Another is that if you're in an area where there is a Latinos in Tech organization, I really encourage you to join. You don't have to be currently working in tech. You could be a student. You could be someone who's just interested in technology. We have wonderful free resources. As the chairwoman of the DC chapter, we would love to have you. And I just wanted to give that plug as we're talking about clubs and resources and organizations that we can join. But, you know, this has been fantastic. It's been truly a pleasure to speak with all three of you. And I can't wait. I can't wait to see how we continue, to lean on each other and advance ourselves and our community moving forward. So thank you so much for taking your time to be here and to chat with me today.
Thank you.
Our pleasure. Thank you.